Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome. This video is being filmed at 1:45 in the afternoon on the 26th of January 2023, and already I've had to turn the light on because it's quite dull and grey outside, meaning the lighting wouldn't be very good. But yes, today I will be reviewing Doctor Who, The War Doctor Begins, He Who Fights with Monsters, the 4th box set in Big Finish's The War Doctor Begins series, and the 8th War Doctor Big Finish box set released overall. It is the 4th one to star Jonathan Carley as the War Doctor, or the younger War Doctor, who of course was played by John Hurt in the original TV series, as well as the original 4 box sets Big Finish produced back in 2015 through 17. And what a ride through these box sets for the Begins series. These have been quite a good run of box sets, with Fortune Fire being a very good start to the series, and Warbringer being a pretty epic 3-part story. Battlegrounds wasn't quite as great, but it was still a pretty decent box set. And then we come to this one, He Who Fights with Monsters, which, had it been the finale as initially planned, or at least scheduled, it would definitely be an amazing finale. But Big Finish recently confirmed at the end of December that the War Doctor adventures will continue. Begins 5 and 6 are confirmed, with the next one being a direct sequel to Warbringer. I was wondering if they were going to do a follow-up to Warbringer, because Battlegrounds didn't. I thought, you know, they were going to do some sort of continuity, but no, each of the first 4 just feel like they're doing their own thing. At least number 5 seems to be following on from number 2 at the very least. Or number 9 following from number 6, depending how you number these. And yes, I am still going to be ranking the first 8 box sets soon, but it may need to be updated following the releases of Begins 5 and 6. But I'm still going to rank numbers 1 to 8 first, because I promised you guys I would rank all 8 box sets of the original 4 and the first 4 Begins after doing this last box set. And with the next 2 confirmed, I thought I'm not going to hold off any longer. I will do the ranking after this one, and if I need to update it next year, I'll update it next year to include Begins 5 and 6. But that's for the ranking video coming within the next couple of videos. But first, we've got to review The War Doctor Begins, He Who Fights with Monsters. In preparation for said ranking video, I did have a look at some of my other reviews for the War Doctor box sets, and I know I was a little bit all over the place with personal opinions, like which box set was my favourite and so forth, but I think I can guarantee, at least for the original 4 and the first 4 Begins, which this might change with the next 2, as of the release of He Who Fights with Monsters, I can say this is the best box set. This is the strongest War Doctor box set, and considering we got quite a lot of competition, this one's a pretty damn strong box set. I know I've gushed over some of the other box sets in the past, and like I said, was a bit all over the place with which one was my favourite. Was it Forged in Fire, or was it Agents of Chaos, and then Casualties of War became my favourite, and Warbringer was a pretty close follow-up to that. I can confirm the other 3 are bottom 3, so I'm not going to put them in that, oh, could they be possibly the strongest one? But I think I can now guarantee He Who Fights with Monsters is probably my favourite box set, with Casualties of War remaining the best John Hurt one, of course. In this box set, we have the stories The Mission, The Abyss, and The Horror, but really those 3 titles are just to differ the 3 episodes of the box set, which is just He Who Fights with Monsters, which is how it's kind of done in the audio anyway, with the big finish indent at the start of part 1 and the credits at the end of part 3. So it's pretty much just He Who Fights with Monsters parts 1, 2, and 3. Really, the individual titles are kind of just to differentiate the 3 episodes, as opposed to call it part 1, part 2, part 3. But to be fair, I do kind of prefer that, because then that sticks in line with previous stories, including the original Only the Monsters, which was also a very similarly structured 3-part story, as was Begins 2, Warbringer, which also was a 3-part story, but with the first episode actually is the finale, in a very clever way how they handled that one. As mentioned at the end of the Battlegrounds review, this box set, all 3 episodes, are written by Robert Valentine, who wrote the final story of the monthly range, The End of the Beginning, or something along those lines, and I really liked that one when I heard that, so I was excited to hear what he had in store for this big 3-part story featuring the War Doctor, and I was not disappointed. This is a really good and really well-structured 3-hour-ish long story. The horror is mostly set up, but there's some really good setup in this one where the War Doctor, after trying to save some people but ultimately not succeeding, is brought to the War Cabinet, or inner circle of the War Cabinet, by the General, played by Ken Bones, who finally returns. He did appear in 8th Doctor Time War 4, but finally, this is the first War Doctor box set to feature the General, and Ken Bones was in the last box set, but playing another character, or characters, and finally, he's now in a War Doctor box set, finally. I believe they were going to have him in John Hurt's 5th War Doctor box set. They were planning on doing another one with him, but with John Hurt passing away, sadly that was not possible. I'm not sure what stories that would have been about, if any of them transferred to the 8th Doctor range, or if any of them have been transferred to here or something along those lines, or if they're just locked away and never to be used, or if they were just on the planning stages. I'm not sure, but certainly he was planned for John Hurt's 5th War Doctor box set, but ultimately they weren't able to make that one due to the tragedy of John Hurt passing away. But as far as the War Doctor audios as a whole go, finally he enters the picture in the 4th Begins box set. Finally! Okay, so back on track with the story. So the General and 2 others send the War Doctor on an assassination mission to kill this other Time Lord, known only as the Barber Surgeon, played by Nicholas D. Prevost, who's been creating these abominable creatures to attack Time Lords and Daleks alike, and believing that the only way to end the Time War is to destroy both, and ultimately just not even win the Time War, just end it. And this is going to be something the Doctor will pick up as his disincarnation goes along. In the end, he kind of loses hope and despair, which leads him to use the moment to wipe out Time Lords and Daleks alike. Or so we're initially led to believe until the events of Day of the Doctor happen. But definitely this story is kind of showcasing this other person willing to do what's necessary, or at least in their beliefs what's necessary, and kind of setting the seed for what the War Doctor will eventually feel like he will need to do when the moment he has to use the moment comes. As the Barber Surgeon says, the moment has been prepared for. The Barber Surgeon likes to bring up some nostalgia stuff. This story is very nostalgia fest for classic series fans, with a few throw-ins for the new series as well, but mostly classic series. There's references to Peladon and Lakira, the planet in Time in the Rani, and 100 BC Earth, and then later Shoreditch Totter's Lane is the Sliverer, Robermen, not to Vagaplan, but that would probably be one too many anyhow. They even have the Master mentioned being in this, as well as a couple of old friends mentioned by the Doctor, some of whom have apparently been lost in the Time War. As they mentioned in the interviews, this isn't just nostalgia references, it's also kind of wrapping the classic series up before we get to the more newer series, Avengers. Of course, by the end of the stories, things seem to have been undone, so who knows what is actually going to be the case moving forward. Like I say, Peladon is apparently destroyed off-screen in this, but after the Barber Surgeon's things have ended and time is reset, spoiler alert for the end of the box set, by the way, maybe it's come back, I'm not really sure. The War Cabinet have also sent the Master to try and kill the Barber Surgeon, but the Master is killed. But maybe when things reset and go back to normal, the Master then carries on doing their shtick. I don't know which incarnation this is, but they then go off to do their shtick after things have reset. It's hopefully, otherwise that is a real kick in the timeline, even more so than masterful. The first story sees the War Doctor with a ragtag group of soldiers as they go to investigate a distress call by the Daleks, a distress beacon or something. And they go down, the Daleks are on their trail with this hunter killer, this kind of Dalek cyborg, human cyborg thing, chasing them down so that they can also get to the barber surgeon so they can kill him and use his weapons factory, with the strategist, the Dalek time strategist, wanting to use the factory. Part 1 is mostly kind of just setting up the story and having the Doctor interact with the soldiers and so forth, and the Daleks on their tail. But it does feel like a really good story doing that. It's a really good instance of the episodes doing the kind of the interaction between the Doctor and him going on this mission. It's a very nice start to the series, and I found it to be quite a lovely start. Well, not lovely as in like it's all flowers and rainbows and stuff. Oh no, there's lots of death and destruction, but yeah, it's a pretty good start to the story, and it's an interesting new direction for the Time War stuff to go in after just more of the same, and not in a bad way in places, of course, because it's the Time War and there will be new interesting ideas every now and again. Look at the last box set with the last story featured a really good kind of way for the Doctor trying to save a planet and having to keep repeating the same day over again in order to try and save it. But I like the idea of this new third party entering the frame, like the Sontarans did in the third box set, and also in one of the Classic Doctor's New Monsters box sets, with one story with the Sontarans. So I like the idea of this third party coming in and trying to basically screw everything up. As I mentioned, the Barber Surgeon is practically sowing the seeds for what the War Doctor is going to do later on in his life towards the end of it, with the moment. The Abyss, I feel, is a bit of the stronger story as the War Doctor goes to Skaro to find out what the Daleks know about him. And as mentioned, the Dalek time strategist wants to get the secrets and the knowledge of the Barber Surgeon, and the two end up having a discussion with each other where the time strategist allows the Doctor to take their information and go. Pretty much. I mean, the Daleks are still trying to kill him anyway, and the Supreme Dalek, the time strategist, sends an execution squad, but then secretly sends its Hunter Dalek killer to destroy that squad and follow the Doctor. So it's the strategist is basically using the Doctor for its own ends. Then again, so is the Time Lords, as they kind of technically also want the Barber Surgeon stuff for their own means. So both sides are kind of playing the Doctor, but at least the Daleks are honest about it, in all fairness. And then the Doctor is just trying to stop the Barber Surgeon from doing what he's doing, and trying to stop this supposed evil, as he believes, but later realizes the Barber Surgeon was kind of just trying to do what was necessary, even if he went too far in the direction of maybe becoming a villain, as opposed to the Doctor who's trying to stay a hero. And this is just a really good concept over the story. The episode ends with the Doctor and the Dalek Hunter Killer meeting up and eventually having to get in to where the Barber Surgeon's factory is, which is later revealed to be in another dimension. The ending of the episode sees a bit of a battle between the Daleks, and the Doctor is exterminated, leading to what is possibly the best cliffhanger of any of these box sets. But as it's revealed in the next episode, that Dalek wasn't one of the ones that they were fighting, and turned out to be one of the other assassins to try and kill the Barber Surgeon, along with two others who he uses all three as a way to test the Doctor. He's setting him up to be his last weapon, as it's implied at the end, because, as mentioned, the War Doctor will go on to almost use the moment to end the Time War. And I think the whole point of all of this was the Barber Surgeon trying to set that up. He was testing the Doctor to see if he would be the one who would go on to do that. The second episode of The Abyss also has the War Doctor kind of having to forcibly team up with this other guy. this other soldier guy who almost turns on him at the end because he isn't so fond of the Doctor's ideas, because he's already starting to wonder if the Time Lords should carry on after this because of the whole Dalek stuff. Granted, the Doctor will miss his species later on when they're gone, presumed dead, and then later lost, and they're dead again. Thank you, Chibnall. But in this story, there definitely does seem to be a hint of them wondering if it's worth them even carrying on at this point, if they're going to be like, if we're not worse than the Daleks. Also, Leela makes a cameo via a kind of message for the Doctor on behalf of the High Council and War Cabinet, which allows Louise Jameson to get another appearance in these series of War Doctor stories, and a nice little teaser if you're listening to them chronologically, a little teaser for what is to come in the John Hurt 4th box set. The 3rd box set, The Horror, is basically these tests the Barber Surgeon is putting the War Doctor through to find out what type of a man he is, and whether he can become his new great weapon. Meanwhile, the Time Lords and the Daleks all converge on Earth and the factory, with the Dalek time strategist trying to get his suckers, basically, on the factory, but he is then overthrown and exterminated by orders of the Emperor, due to him kind of wanting to try and take over from the Emperor, or try to do a kind of a bit of a power play or whatnot. We've had some of this in Temesis in the previous box set, kind of like the strategist and this other Commander Dalek kind of tried to snug up to the Emperor as their number 2, and there was a bit of power play between them. And now we kind of got that again here with the strategist trying to take over from the Emperor, basically. And then the Emperor's like, no way, you're not doing that, mate. And then has him executed. Which does beg up the question, does that mean the Dalek time strategist, after this point, like in the other War Doctor box sets, is that another Dalek time strategist? Or another type of strategist in general? Because I know there's two time strategists. There's two types of strategists in the 8th Doctor era, the time strategist and a blue one. Anyway, the Emperor's forces want to destroy the factory because of the threat the Barber Surgeon posed to them, and hence the strategist going against him. And eventually the Time Lords engage in a fight, but the Doctor then is able to destroy the factory and taking some of the Daleks with them, and he and the Time Lords escape. The destruction of the factory means that, as mentioned, things get reset back to normal. The Hunter-Killer does kill the Barber Surgeon, but he himself is then killed by the Dalek. The Barber Surgeon got to use as the test for the Doctor, who then dies of when the Hunter-Killer attacked it moments before. And so things kind of wrap up, and the Barber Surgeon is kind of erased from people's memories, and it's just leaving little teasers and hints to what the War Doctor could become. Something not too dissimilar, but without going amoral. Jonathan Carley delivers his finest performance as the War Doctor in all 3 of these episodes, especially at the end of part 2, start of part 3 of the story, where he's basically yelling at the Dalek, which is later revealed to be the one the Barber Surgeon is using as a test. He's basically demanding it gets it over with by killing him. Just do it. Just like David Tennant in Evolution of the Daleks, the TV episode. He's basically demanding that it just gets it over with. He does a fantastic performance across all 3 episodes, and he's just absolutely perfect. I'm even tempted to say he does better than John Hurt in most points, but then again, John Hurt was absolutely amazing in all of his stuff as well. Jonathan Carley is easily the best non-original actor to play one of the earlier Doctors, to voice an incarnation of the Doctor. What I mean is the new actors they've got to take over from the original actors when they're not available or are no longer around. So Richard Herndale, David Bradley, even Tim Treloar, and many, many more have voiced the Doctor in Big Finish or played them on screen in the case of Herndale and Bradley. And out of all of the replacement actors for all of the Doctors, whether they're no longer with us, like Hartnell or Hurt, or if they're just not around to do some of their stuff, like when Jacob Dubman does some of the new series Doctors, out of everybody who has voiced the characters or played the characters, besides the original actors themselves, Jonathan Carley is, in my opinion, the best. He not only captures what John Hurt brought to the performance of the War Doctor, nor does he just capture the War Doctor as a character. He basically matches, nay, even in places excels as his own version of the War Doctor, whilst still sounding extremely similar to John Hurt, but still making it sound not like he sounds like him, but he's not trying to be him. He's just being the same character, and it's seamless. You could listen to one of these box sets, and you could listen to one of the John Hurt box sets, and there's very little difference between the voice. Obviously, there's going to be a few little bits because Impressionist and the original, but in terms of Impressionists, I feel like Jonathan Carley is almost indistinguishable from John Hurt, maybe minus a few little notions here and there, because they're not the same voice, but because he's doing such a great job as the character, he just hits the nail on the head so spot on. And the fact he's done 12 episodes, nay, they've recorded the next box set, the fact he's done at least 15 episodes so far, recording-wise, with another 3, if not recorded already, coming soon, to be recorded soon, and will be out on CD and download by this time next year. And yeah, he's incredible. He's absolutely fucking amazing. I'm sure a lot of Fraser Hines, John Coleshaw, and Third Doctor fans are going to come after me for that statement, though. As for the other characters, Nicholas D. Prevros is brilliant as the barber surgeon. He's not in it too much before the 3rd episode, but about halfway through the 3rd one, he kind of jumps on board in a more of a main role, and he's absolutely brilliant. Technically, he's the main villain, but he's also not really that villainous towards the Doctor personally in the last episode, and he just does an absolutely brilliant job as playing this worn-out character who just wants to try and end the Time War, but has done it in such an immoral way and such a destructive way that it's led to both sides basically coming after him, which is pretty much what you expect when you attack both sides. But the barber surgeon just feels like a really compelling character when he's on, and when you hear him. I don't want to say on screen because this is not on screen, but he's such a really compelling character, and I really enjoyed listening to him. As mentioned earlier, I'm happy and excited to hear Ken Bones back as the General. He's brilliant in the scenes he gets. And the Dalek Hunter Killer is a pretty formidable foe / part-time ally in Part 2 for the Doctor and other characters like the Barber Surgeon. So, yeah, he does a pretty good job. Jason Merrills voices him. It's also a joy to listen to Louise Jameson back as Leela for her short time in the story as well. Other notable characters are Rodion, which I believe is the character the Doctor saves / tries to save at the start of the story, played by Emily Jane McNeil, and she does a really good job in her short role, whilst Velikor, who is the Doctor's main, not quite companion, but she's basically the one who hangs out with the Doctor the most, so to say, in Part 1, the mission, played by Indigo Griffiths. She's also really good and quite a really fun character to be with the Doctor. She feels both like companion material, but also like the hardcore general that she is, who previously had life beforehand, working with the Doctor. It's a nice blend of what we've seen before with characters who kind of willingly team up with the Doctor, as well as kind of like bossy army people who had other jobs beforehand. Meanwhile, we have Narthex, played by Harry Kershaw, who takes over as the main ally character for Part 2, besides the General, but the General's not in Part 2. And also the Hunter Killer at the end, I guess. But Narthex is a bit more formal. He's a bit more, not by the books, but basically he's more like the soldiers who are pretty much made to team up with the Doctor, whether they like it or not. He's a bit more stern, and given the chance, I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to kill or arrest the Doctor for so-called treason because of the War Doctor expressing his dismay with the Time Lords, and that one pondering whether it's worth them staying around. And then the Daleks show up and he gets exterminated. So, yay. To be fair, Narthex is probably my least favourite character in these box sets out of the major characters. But considering my least favourite parts of his character come not too far before the end, and just before we hear him for the last time, it's not so much of an issue. The only other ones to really mention is the characters used by the barber surgeon to test the Doctor, which are pretty cool. I really liked Richie Dish as the constable. He's really fun. I really enjoyed him, whilst Paxi Vernon does a really good job as the companion, and they also voice some other minor characters. And of course, Nicholas Briggs as the Daleks. Always phenomenal, giving each Dalek performance really great stuff. It's also interesting that there's some spider Daleks which are seen on this cover, this interesting spider Dalek designs, but they don't even really appear properly in the second episode. It's more of the usual Daleks elsewhere. But yeah, some interesting stuff with new Dalek designs, plus the Hunter-Killer, which is a really clever idea. Overall, The War Doctor Begins, He Who Fights with Monsters is a brilliantly constructed story with some amazing performances, especially from our lead actor, Jonathan Carley, as well as supporting actors like Ken Bones and especially Nicholas D. Prevost, with Nicholas Briggs continuing to be amazing as the Daleks. Interesting new Dalek designs and ideas and concepts, including the Hunter-Killer. Plus, we get a couple of interesting Time Lord characters along for the ride as well. With great script and great execution, amazing performances, and just an outright brilliantly structured 3-part story over this box set, I am easily going to be giving The Mission, The Abyss, The Horror, and He Who Fights with Monsters overall 10 out of 10 scores. This is easily one of Big Finish's best ever releases. For ranking purposes, again, like with Warbringer, I would say it gets better over the course of the box set. Each one gets better and better, so The Mission is my personal least favourite of this box set, then The Abyss, and then The Horror is the best. But all three are three of the absolute best Big Finish stories out there. Okay, they're not as good as Chimes of Midnight or Jubilee or Spare Parts from the monthly range, and I still consider the Shadow Squad from Forged in Fire my personal favourite War Doctor story. But this is easily one of Big Finish's best output, in my personal opinion. I haven't heard too much from Big Finish. I've heard quite a bit, but I haven't heard, well, obviously everything, but I haven't heard a huge amount. I know there's more people who are more versed into Big Finish than I am, and I'm just listening to what I can, what I like, and what I want, and so forth. But from what I've heard, this is one of the best stuff I've heard from them. Well, all three of the best stuff. You're going for individual episodes, and along with Shadow Squad as well. So that's four of the best episodes from Big Finish I've ever heard are War Doctor ones, and it's just absolutely incredible. This box set, it's just so good. I highly recommend checking out this one. It is such an amazing story. And that's it for my review of The War Doctor Begins, He Who Fights with Monsters. Sorry if it's been quite long and a bit rambly and all over the place. The next War Doctor box set, which is due to be released in May and will be the 5th box set in the Begins series and the 9th overall, is going to follow up Warbringer by the looks of it, or at least bring back Case, played by Azad Awad in this box set. I'm looking forward to seeing how that box set either continues the story of Warbringer or brings Case and perhaps other characters from this box set, because there's another character on the cover-up who's not listed. Is that Veclin, maybe? Not sure. But it looks like they're bringing Case back for another box set, and I'm really interested to hear what they've got with her. And then the 6th, and currently listed as final, but you never know at this point, release will be coming in December of this year. Before we get there, however, I am going to do that promised ranking of the War Doctor 1 to 4 and the War Doctor Begins 1 to 4 coming soon. So War Doctor fans, I'll see you guys for that, and Universals fans, I'll see you guys for the next video. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.